I did not shout. I did not tell her who I was. I held my shopping bag against my chest and let my phone keep recording because I already suspected she was hiding something. Before that night was over, I learned her family was not only hunting for my son's fortune, they had already forged his signature. Hello everyone. My name is Teresa Carter. I am 64 years old and I live just outside Nashville, Tennessee. I am a widow, a mother, and the founder of Carter Development Group, one of the largest privately owned construction companies in the state. Most people who meet me now see the company, the house, and the money. They do not see the years when I counted grocery dollars at midnight or the mornings when I put on steel-toed boots and walked onto job sites where no one believed a woman belonged. But this story is not about how I became wealthy. It is about the night my son's fiancée looked at my old clothes, decided I was a beggar, and sprayed me with a garden hose in front of 30 guests. She laughed while I knelt in the mud. I did not shout. I did not tell her who I was. I held my shopping bag against my chest and let my phone keep recording because I already suspected she was hiding something. Before that night was over, I learned her family was not only hunting for my son's fortune, they had already forged his signature. My only child, Ethan, was 34. He was thoughtful, loyal, and far more willing to trust people than I was. His father, David, died when Ethan was 9. From that day on, it was the two of us against the world. I built the company so Ethan would have choices I never had, but I also taught him to carry his own weight. He earned an engineering degree, worked on job sites, and rose through the business without using my name to skip a step. And then he met Vanessa Mitchell at a charity dinner in Atlanta. Vanessa was beautiful, confident, and skilled at making one person feel like the only person in the room. Ethan came alive around her. After years of putting work first, he finally spoke about marriage, children, and a home that did not feel empty. I wanted that happiness for him, so I welcomed Vanessa. I invited her to dinner, helped her choose a wedding planner, and even offered my grandmother's earrings for the ceremony. Still, little things bothered me. Vanessa was warm to people who could help her and cold to people who could not. At a restaurant, she thanked the owner and ignored the woman refilling her water. At my office, she smiled at executives, but complained that the receptionist's shoes looked cheap. When Ethan suggested a prenuptial agreement, Vanessa cried for 3 hours and called it an insult. A week later, she pushed to move the wedding forward by 4 months. Then my chief financial officer discovered that someone had tried to access a restricted file containing Ethan's private assets schedule. The attempt came through a guest account created during one of Vanessa's visits. Ethan believed it was a technical mistake. I wanted to believe that too. But after 30 years in business, I had learned a hard lesson when facts whisper, listen before they have to scream. I hired Margaret Bennett, my longtime attorney, to conduct a quiet background review. 2 days before the engagement party, she called me. Teresa, we found debts connected to Vanessa's father and 3 companies that appear to exist only on paper. I need more time. The party was being held at an estate in Belle Meade that our company used for charitable events. Vanessa had taken control of every detail. She told Ethan I should arrive late because she wanted to surprise me with a family tribute. That lie gave me an idea. I bought a faded brown shawl, a plain blouse, and worn shoes from a thrift shop outside Nashville. I tucked my gray hair beneath an old scarf and carried a reusable grocery bag. Inside the bag, in a waterproof pouch, was my phone. I turned on the recorder before walking through the side gate. I did not intend to trap Vanessa into doing something terrible. A kind person would have offered directions. A cautious person might have called security. I only wanted to see how she treated someone she believed had no power. I had taken 10 steps across the lawn when she saw me. "Excuse me," I said. "I'm looking for Mr. Ethan Carter." Vanessa stood beneath crystal lights hanging from oak trees, wearing an ivory designer dress and holding a glass of champagne. Her mother, Patricia, was beside her. Her father, George, was speaking with 2 bankers near the rose-covered tables. Vanessa looked me up and down. "You need to leave. I only need a moment with Mr. Carter." She smiled, but there was no kindness in it. "They don't let beggars sit at respectable people's parties." Before I could answer, she picked up the garden hose being used to fill decorative fountains and aimed it at my chest. The icy water hit my face with such force that I lost my balance. My shawl became heavy. My shoes slid on the wet grass, and I fell to my knees. For one stunned second, the yard was silent. Then several guests laughed. A man raised his phone and began recording. 2 women covered their mouths, not in horror, but to hide their smiles. No one told Vanessa to stop. "Look at her," she shouted. "She came dressed for a handout. Maybe she wants a seat at the wedding too." Patricia laughed softly. Get her out before she ruins the photographs. George barely looked at me. Check her bag before she goes. We don't want anything missing. Anger rose inside me so quickly that I could taste it. But I kept my voice weak. Please, I only need to see Ethan. A young waiter named Michael stepped toward me with a linen napkin. Mom, let me help you. Vanessa turned on him. Touch her and you will be unemployed before dessert. Michael froze. I reached out, squeezed his hand, and whispered, It's all right, sweetheart. Today everyone is showing us who they are. Vanessa rolled her eyes. Now the homeless woman is giving lessons. Water ran down my neck and collected in the wrinkles of my hands. I looked directly at her. Remember my face, I said. This is the last day you will treat another human being this way and believe there will be no consequences. Her smile tightened. Is that a threat? The sliding glass doors opened behind her. Ethan walked outside holding a champagne glass. When he saw me kneeling in the mud, the color vanished from his face. The glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the stone patio. Mom. The words struck the party like thunder. Vanessa lowered the hose. Patricia stared at the ground. George took one slow step backward. Ethan ran across the lawn, dropped beside me, and wrapped his suit jacket around my shoulders. Who did this? He demanded. No one answered. Vanessa finally reached for him. Honey, it was a misunderstanding. I thought she had wandered in asking for money. Ethan turned toward her with an expression I had never seen before. So you assaulted an elderly stranger because you thought she was poor. Do not overreact. It was a joke. Why would your mother come dressed like that? I put my hand over Ethan's. Not here, I said. Help me inside. He knew my calm voice. It did not mean forgiveness. It meant I was thinking. As we reached the house, Patricia whispered behind us, Fix this tonight. If that old woman gets involved, everything falls apart. Vanessa answered, After the wedding, Ethan will have to choose. Her or me. My phone captured every word. Then it vibrated inside the bag. A message from Margaret appeared on the screen. We found the loan guarantee, it said. It carries Ethan's signature. And he did not sign it. Upstairs, a housekeeper named Maria brought me dry towels and a cup of hot tea. Her hands trembled as she set them down. Mrs. Carter, I am sorry, she said. I should have helped you. You have nothing to apologize for. Her eyes filled with tears. Miss Vanessa told us anyone who embarrassed her tonight would never work at another event in Nashville. I asked Maria to sit. At first she refused, as if even using a guest chair might cost her job. When she finally spoke, the words came quickly. Vanessa had called employees trash, thrown a plate because the sauce was wrong, and ordered an older gardener to work through chest pain. Patricia had demanded that a pregnant server be removed because she did not fit the party's appearance. Do other employees know? I asked. All of us know. We just need our jobs. That sentence hurt more than the hose. I had resources, attorneys, and a son who loved me. The staff had rent, children, and supervisors who could blacklist them. No one will lose a job for telling the truth, I promised. Not while my name is on this property. And after Maria left, I called Margaret. She explained that George Mitchell's development company, Summit Legacy Holdings, owed nearly $9 million. 2 banks had refused to extend its loans. 3 weeks earlier, George had submitted a letter claiming Carter Development Group would guarantee the debt after Ethan and Vanessa married. The document included a digital image of Ethan's signature. A guarantee is not active yet, Margaret said, but presenting a forged document to obtain credit can still become a serious criminal matter. We are preserving the records and notifying the bank's fraud unit. Does Vanessa know? Her personal email forwarded Ethan's asset schedule to George. We cannot yet prove she created the signature, but she is involved. I stared out the window. Below me, workers were replacing wet tablecloths while the remaining guests pretended nothing had happened. Give me until morning, I said. Do not contact the Mitchells yet. I was about to leave the guest room when voices drifted from the library across the hall. The door was slightly open. I stopped outside. Vanessa was crying, but the sound was controlled, almost rehearsed. Ethan will cancel everything. Patricia answered. Not if you make Teresa look unstable. Tell him she dressed like that to sabotage you. Say she has been confused lately. George spoke next. Forget the party. The bank wants the final guarantee by Friday. We need the marriage license and access to Ethan's accounts. What if he insists on the prenup? Vanessa asked. Then cry. Patricia said. Tell him trust matters more than money. Threaten to leave. He wants a family so badly that he will surrender. There was a long pause. Vanessa's voice became cold. Once we are married, I can separate him from his mother. If he divorces me, I get a settlement. If he stays, we get access from the inside. I held my phone near the opening and recorded until George mentioned destroying an old accounting laptop. Then a floorboard creaked beneath my shoe. The voices stopped. The library door began to open. I moved into the guest room and closed the door just as George stepped into the hallway. Through the narrow gap, I watched him look in both directions. He stood there for several seconds before returning to the library. Only then did I breathe. Ethan drove me home before midnight. He apologized again and again. I did not tell him everything in the car, because shock can make people hear only the part they are ready to deny. The next morning he arrived at my house without shaving. He sat at the kitchen table where he had once done his schoolwork, and placed Vanessa's ring box in front of him. "I am ending the engagement today," he said. "You may end it?" I replied. "But first you need to understand what you are ending." I played the recording from the library. At first he stared at me as if the words were in another language. When Vanessa said she could separate him from me, his eyes closed. When George mentioned the guarantee, Ethan stood so suddenly that his chair struck the floor. I never signed anything. Margaret entered from the study carrying a blue folder. She laid the forged document before him. Ethan examined the signature, then shook his head. "That image came from the closing papers on my condo. Vanessa helped me scan them last month." The betrayal was complete. She had used an ordinary moment of trust as a tool against him. Ethan wanted to call her immediately. Margaret stopped him. "If they know the bank is investigating, records may disappear. George already mentioned an accounting laptop. We need them calm long enough to preserve evidence." I hated asking my son to speak gently to the woman who had used him, but he agreed. He called Vanessa and said emotions had been high. He told her we should all meet at my house the next evening to discuss the wedding and prenuptial agreement. Her relief traveled clearly through the speaker. "I knew you would understand," she said. "Your mother cannot come between us." After the call, Ethan walked to the window. Was any of it real? Some of her feelings may have been real. I said, "People are rarely made from only one thing. But love that requires your blindness is not safe love." That afternoon, Margaret's forensic accountant joined us. The bank's fraud team provided access logs showing that George had uploaded the false guarantee from his office. Vanessa's email had supplied the private assets schedule 4 minutes earlier. We also found messages in which Patricia asked when Ethan's family trust would become reachable after marriage. The evidence was strong, but Margaret warned us not to turn the dinner into a television courtroom. Our goal was to give the Mitchells a chance to explain, preserve any admissions, and keep them from learning the full scope of the bank's investigation. At 7 the next evening, a black SUV stopped outside my house. Vanessa stepped out in a red dress, carrying flowers. Patricia wore pearls. George carried a leather briefcase. They entered smiling as if the previous 48 hours had never happened. Vanessa hugged Ethan. He kept his hands at his sides. George placed the briefcase beside his chair. "Let us put this unfortunate misunderstanding behind us." "I agree," I said. "But first, I would like each of you to tell the truth." I touched the recorder beneath the table. They thought they had come to save a wedding. In reality, I was giving them one final opportunity to lie. Vanessa began with tears. She said the hose had slipped. Then she said she had only meant to frighten me. Finally, she blamed champagne, stress, the caterer, and even the lighting in the garden. "I did not know who you were," she repeated. "That is the part you still do not understand," I said. "My identity should not have been the difference between kindness and cruelty." Patricia leaned forward. "Vanessa has apologized. Must we keep humiliating her?" The word almost made me laugh. To Patricia, accountability was humiliation, but forcing an older woman into the mud was entertainment. Margaret sat beside me, introduced herself as family counsel, and placed a prenuptial agreement on the table. It protected all premarital property, required full financial disclosure, and prevented either spouse from becoming responsible for undisclosed family debt. Vanessa did not read the first page. "I will not sign a document that says Ethan expects our marriage to fail." Ethan's voice was quiet. "If you are marrying me for love, then why does protecting what came before us threaten you?" "Because marriage means sharing." "Does sharing include your father's $9 million debt?" The flowers slipped from Vanessa's lap. George recovered first. "I do not know what you have been told, but Summit Legacy is experiencing a temporary cash flow problem. It has nothing to do with Vanessa." Margaret slid a copy of the loan guarantee across the table. "Then perhaps you can explain this." George glanced at it and shrugged. "A preliminary projection. It has no legal force. It was presented to First Cumberland Bank as evidence of future financial backing." Who told you that? His question revealed more than an answer would have. Ethan turned the paper toward Vanessa. This is my signature. I did not put it there. She went pale. Daddy said the bank only needed to see what the arrangement might look like. George snapped. Vanessa, stop talking. Silence filled the room. So you knew, Ethan said. Not at first. Then they told me it would be replaced after the wedding, and no one was going to lose anything. I watched my son's hope die in small stages. Even after hearing the recording, some part of him had wanted Vanessa to offer an innocent explanation. Instead, she had admitted knowing that his identity was being used. Patricia reached for his hand. Ethan, families help each other. Once you and Vanessa were married, you would have benefited when Summit recovered. You planned to make me responsible without asking me. We planned to protect our daughter's future. By stealing mine. George rose from his chair. This conversation is over. Margaret remained calm. Before you leave, I advise you not to alter, remove, or destroy any records connected to Summit Legacy, the guarantee, or communications with First Cumberland Bank. He stared at her. Is that a threat? It is a warning to preserve evidence. Vanessa turned to Ethan. Your mother has always hated me. She dressed like a homeless woman because she wanted me to fail. I took my phone from the table and played the library recording. Patricia's voice filled the room. Tell him she has been confused lately. Then George, the bank wants the final guarantee by Friday. Then Vanessa, if he stays, we get access from the inside. No one moved. Vanessa's tears vanished. You recorded a private conversation. I recorded a threat against my family, while standing in my own property. I said. But this dinner is not about whether that recording becomes evidence. It told us where to look. The bank records, emails, access logs, and forged documents speak for themselves. George's face changed. The polished businessman disappeared, and the man beneath it stepped forward. You think money makes you untouchable, Teresa? No. I think evidence makes the truth difficult to bury. He pointed at me. If our family falls, I will drag yours through every newspaper in this country. Ethan stood between us. Do not threaten my mother. George laughed. You weak little fool. You were useful for one thing, and now even that is gone. Vanessa flinched. Perhaps it was the first honest reaction I had seen from her. Her father had just reduced her engagement to a business transaction in front of everyone. Patricia grabbed her purse. Come on, Vanessa. At the door, Vanessa looked back at Ethan. If you let me leave, we are finished. He removed the engagement ring from the box on the table and held it out to her. We were finished when you copied my signature. She did not take the ring. She ran outside, and Patricia followed. George paused long enough to give Margaret a look of pure hatred, then picked up his briefcase and left. The moment the door closed, Margaret called the bank investigator. They know, she said. Activate the preservation plan. The bank had already issued formal hold notices to its employees. Investigators had secured copies of all documents George submitted. What remained at risk were the internal records at Summit Legacy. For the next hour, nothing happened. Ethan sat in the study staring at the unclaimed ring. I wanted to comfort him, but there are moments when a person must sit beside the truth until it becomes real. At 10:18 p.m., the security company monitoring Summit Legacy sent an automated alert to Margaret's forensic accountant. George's access card had opened the office. Minutes later, a second alert showed that a smoke detector in the records room had been disabled. Margaret called the investigator again. He is at the office, she said. We have reason to believe records are being destroyed. The bank's counsel contacted law enforcement, who were already reviewing the suspected fraud. We did not chase George. We did not play detectives. We stayed in my study while trained people handled it. At 10:41, Ethan's phone rang. It was Vanessa. He answered on speaker. Ethan, you have to stop your mother, she said. Her voice was frantic. Daddy says police are outside the office. Why is he there? Ethan asked. He only went to clean up some files. At 10 o'clock at night. She started crying. Tell them the signature was yours. Say you gave us permission. If you ever loved me, you will do this. Ethan looked at me, and I watched the last piece of her power over him disappear. I did love you, he said. That is why what you did hurts. But I will not commit a crime to protect the people who tried to steal my future. He ended the call. At 11:06, Margaret received confirmation that George had been detained after officers found him feeding financial records into an industrial shredder. A laptop was discovered in a trash bin behind the building. Its hard drive had been damaged but not destroyed. I thought that would be the worst news of the night. Then the forensic accountant opened George's leather briefcase, which he had accidentally left beside our dining room chair. Inside was a second set of papers. At the top was a proposed amendment to my family trust, bearing my name and another forged signature. The trust amendment was more dangerous than the bank guarantee. It would have named Vanessa as a temporary advisor if Ethan became unable to manage his affairs. Attached to it was a draft letter claiming I had shown signs of mental decline. They had not only planned to use my son, they had been building a story that could remove both of us from our own decisions. Margaret photographed the papers where they lay, notified the investigators, and locked the briefcase in our safe until an officer collected it under a written chain of custody. By sunrise, I had not slept. Neither had Ethan. They were going to call you incompetent, he said. They were going to try. Because I brought Vanessa into our lives. Because they made a choice. I corrected him. Do not carry responsibility that belongs to them. Over the next 2 weeks, the investigation grew. The damaged laptop contained backups of false statements, altered contracts, and messages between George, Patricia, and Vanessa. Investigators found 3 other business owners whose names had appeared on proposed guarantees they had never approved. One was an 81-year-old widower. Another was a restaurant owner who had trusted George for 20 years. Vanessa's role was impossible to dismiss. She had sent private financial details, arranged meetings, and asked a graphic designer to isolate signatures from scanned documents. Patricia had created schedules showing when each target would be most vulnerable to pressure. Federal prosecutors became involved because the scheme used interstate wire transfers and federally insured banks. George was charged with bank fraud, aggravated identity theft, conspiracy, and destruction of evidence. Patricia and Vanessa were charged with conspiracy and wire fraud. Their attorneys reminded everyone that charges were not convictions, and I respected that. Justice requires proof, not anger. But the proof kept coming. The video from the engagement party also appeared online. One of the guests had posted it with a laughing emoji, then deleted it when the reaction turned against him. By then, copies were everywhere. The headline read Bride to Besoaks, Beggars. Then learns she is the groom's mother. Commentators argued about my disguise. Some called it a cruel test. Others said Vanessa had been ambushed. I declined every television interview. I would not turn Ethan's grief into entertainment, and I would not interfere with a criminal case. The one comment captured the truth better than any speech I could have given. The problem was not that she failed to recognize a rich woman. The problem was that she believed a poor woman deserved cruelty. As the Mitchell family's carefully built image collapsed, Summit Legacy entered bankruptcy. Their club suspended them. Friends who had laughed in my garden suddenly claimed they had always been uncomfortable around Vanessa. That part did not impress me. Courage that arrives after the danger has passed is usually only reputation management. Michael, the waiter who tried to help me, gave a sworn statement. So did Maria and 9 other employees. I paid for independent attorneys to advise them so no one could claim I had purchased their words. Their testimony was consistent. Vanessa and Patricia had used threats, wage deductions, and humiliation to control staff for months. Ethan struggled quietly. He returned to work, but he stopped trusting compliments and questioned every friendship. One evening I found him sitting on the back steps of my house with the engagement ring in his palm. I keep replaying the good moments, he said. If she was pretending, then I do not know what was real. I sat beside him. A manipulated person does not become foolish because the manipulator was skilled. Your love was real because you gave it honestly. Her dishonesty cannot rewrite your character. Do you hate her? I considered the question. I hate what she did. But if I spend the rest of my life feeding hatred, she still controls something that belongs to me. That did not mean there would be no consequences. Through a civil action, Ethan obtained a permanent order preventing the Mitchells from using his name or company information. The bank pursued restitution. Employees recovered unpaid wages from a separate settlement. Our company strengthened privacy controls, so no guest account could reach sensitive files again. The Belle Meade Estates event manager offered to resign because staff had been threatened under his supervision. I did not accept immediately. I required him to meet every employee, listen without defending himself, repay lost wages, and complete a plan giving workers a safe way to report abuse. Accountability should repair what it can, not merely remove whoever makes us uncomfortable. Months later, George pleaded guilty after the recovered laptop connected him to every forged document. Patricia admitted helping conceal the scheme. Vanessa held out longer. She told prosecutors that her parents had pressured her, and that she had loved Ethan. Perhaps both things were partly true. Pressure can explain a choice, but it does not erase it. No one had forced her to turn on the hose. No one had forced her to threaten Michael. Cruelty had been the part she contributed freely, 3 days before trial, she accepted a plea agreement requiring restitution, community service, and a prison sentence whose length would be decided by a judge. She also agreed to testify about the remaining accounts. The night before sentencing, an envelope arrived at my office. Inside was a handwritten letter from Vanessa. She did not ask me to save her. She wrote that she had spent her life believing status was safety. Her parents taught her that being poor was the worst possible failure, so she learned to step on anyone who reminded her of it. When I saw you in that shawl, she wrote, I saw the future I feared. I punished you for it. I understand now that the shame was mine. Ethan read the letter once and put it down. Do you believe her? He'd asked. I believe she finally understands what she lost, I said. Whether she understands who she hurt will be proved by what she does when no one is applauding. The next morning we entered the federal courthouse together. Vanessa sat between her attorneys, wearing a plain dark suit. For the first time since I had known her, she wore no diamonds and made no effort to command the room. The judge reviewed the fraud, the forged signatures, the attempt to portray me as mentally unfit, and the harm done to the other victims. Then he invited me to speak. I walked to the lectern carrying the same faded shawl Vanessa had soaked in my garden. She looked at it and began to cry. I unfolded the shawl slowly. Your Honor, I said. I did not bring this because I want revenge without mercy. I brought it because every crime in this case began with the same belief, that some people exist to be used. A lonely man became a signature. An employee became disposable labor. My son became a bank account. I became an old woman whose dignity did not matter. I looked directly at Vanessa. I forgive you enough not to hate you, but forgiveness is not permission to escape the truth. The courtroom remained silent as I returned to my seat. The judge opened the sentencing decision. At last, justice was ready to answer. The George received 7 years in federal prison and was ordered to pay restitution with the others. Patricia received a shorter prison term, followed by supervised release, because of her cooperation. Vanessa received 22 months, 3 years of supervised release, restitution, and mandatory service after her release with organizations supporting older adults and low-wage workers. The judge told her, service will not be punishment if you learn to see the people in front of you. It will be an education. Vanessa nodded through her tears. She did not look at Ethan as officers led her away. That was the first respectful thing she had done for him in a long time. The Mitchells lost the lake house and their office building in bankruptcy. I did not celebrate their fear or humiliation, but when the office building went to auction, Carter Development bought it through a fully disclosed bid. Some people called that my revenge. In a way, it was. I removed the gold letters that spelled SEMEACY from the entrance. Then we renovated the building and opened the No One is Invisible Center. It offered free legal clinics for seniors facing financial exploitation, emergency grants for service workers, job training, and a confidential hotline for employees experiencing abuse. The old records room, where George had tried to destroy evidence, became a classroom teaching people how to protect their identities and finances. Patricia's former office became a counseling room. The executive dining room became a community kitchen where no one was ever judged by clothing, income, or job title. Michael accepted a position as the center's operations coordinator. He was only 23, but he understood courage better than many executives I had met. Maria received a scholarship to finish her business degree, and later joined our employee relations team. I did not give them those opportunities as rewards for helping me. I gave them a fair door to walk through, and they proved they belonged there. Ethan took longer to heal. For nearly a year, he avoided dating. He attended counseling, worked, and volunteered at the center on Saturdays. He learned that boundaries are not the opposite of love. They are what allow healthy love to survive. One afternoon, I saw him laughing with a legal aid attorney named Grace while they carried boxes of food into the community kitchen. I said nothing. A mother can learn patience too. 6 months after the center opened, we held our first fundraiser in the same Belle Meade garden where Vanessa had sprayed me. I considered choosing another location, but I did not want one cruel memory to own a beautiful place. The chandeliers again hung from the oak trees. White roses covered the tables. This time, every staff member was introduced by name and paid well for the evening. Guests included construction workers, teachers, restaurant employees, business owners, seniors, and families the center had helped. I wore a simple blue dress. The old brown shawl rested over my arm. Ethan stepped onto the small stage. A year ago, he said, I believed respect was something everyone understood. Then my mother showed me that some people perform kindness only when power is watching. I nearly married a woman whose words were beautiful and whose choices were cruel. He looked toward Michael and Maria. Real character is not revealed by how someone treats a person they want to impress. It is revealed by how they treat the waiter, the housekeeper, the security guard, the stranger, and the elderly woman they believe can do nothing for them. Then he invited me to the stage. I held up the shawl. "This costs $6 at a thrift shop," I said. For a few minutes, it made 30 people believe they knew my value. One young waiter looked past it. One housekeeper found the courage to speak. Their choices mattered more than every expensive suit in that garden. I told the audience that I had once thought exposing Vanessa would be the end of the story. It was not. Exposure stopped one family, but building the center helped hundreds of people. Justice became meaningful only when we used it to protect someone else. After the speeches, Ethan and I walked to the edge of the garden. The fountains glowed beneath the lights.
"You saved my life?"
He said. "No," I answered. "I showed you a door before you walked into a burning house. You chose not to enter. Do you think I will trust someone again? Yes. But next time, do not only listen when she is speaking to you. Watch who she becomes around someone she does not need." He smiled. Across the lawn, Grace waved for him to help with a box. He went without pretending he had not noticed her. For the first time in months, I laughed. That is the complete story of how one engagement party uncovered a much larger betrayal. Vanessa believed I was a poor stranger, humiliated me, and revealed a cruelty her polished image had hidden. My recording led us to look more closely. What we discovered was a plan to use my son's marriage, forge his signature, burden him with debt, and eventually portray me as mentally unfit. Evidence, a patient investigation, brave witnesses, and the law brought the scheme to an end. The wedding was cancelled, the guilty people faced consequences, and a building once used to hide fraud became a place that protects vulnerable people. The lesson I learned is simple, but I will carry it for the rest of my life. Never measure character by charm, clothing, education, or wealth. Pay attention to how people behave when they think there will be no consequences. Listen when employees are afraid to speak. Take small warning signs seriously. Protect love with honesty and healthy boundaries. And remember that forgiveness does not require you to remove accountability. Revenge may feel satisfying for a moment, but the strongest justice does more than make a cruel person fall. It lifts someone else up. My true victory was not seeing the Mitchell name removed from a building. It was watching Michael unlock its doors for people who once believed no one would help them. Thank you for staying with me until the end of my story. If it touched you, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs the reminder that dignity never depends on money. I would also love to know in the comments, what would you have done in my place? As for the shawl, I keep it framed inside the center's entrance. Beneath it is one final sentence: "The moment you decide someone is powerless is often the moment you reveal who truly has none."